Doug's going to demonstrate batoning for you here, and first thing he's going to do is describe the instruments required to do this process.
We have the saw.
That is the silky saw, and it is really quite an amazing saw. And you can saw, it's a big saw too. It's one thing interesting about that saw is that you cut on the pull, not the push.
Which makes it easier on the bit. And it's how we cut these off of a fallen birch tree.
Yep. And always hold it up and put it back in its case.
In its case, those teeth are. This is a Japanese design tool. It's an arborist tool.
The second item is the knife he uses for batoning. It is a jungless. Is it made in Sweden or somewhere?
No, it's made in the U.S.
Oh, okay.
Everything's U.S. Jungless, made by ESEESE. And it's Randall's Adventures. He's an adventurer.
Okay.
Designed these things. You want a nice, well, you don't have to have it this long, but for bigger wood, it's nice to have a nice long blade and a thick tang,
right.
Which just gives the blade support. And so, well, with the next tool of the trade, you'll understand why you want a nice, thick, strong blade. So I'll leave this out because we'll be using it. The other tool of the trade is the batoning stick. You want to be able to hit the blade so that the blade acts as a wedge and it will go through and split wood. The process, the end process result is these pieces of wood like this that we've staged already. You want to go from a smaller piece. As you start a fire, you want to have kindling in the fire grate. Right? Birch bark is a great tool in the boundary borders. Given to us by nature. The birch bark, it peels right off. It's like parchment paper almost, and it burns very readily. Even when it's wet, it'll burn.
It's impregnated with oil, and so it's just a fuel. I mean, it's a oil-based fuel.
Right. Right. So, and you shouldn't. And actually, the piece that you really want is this piece right here to get things started. And it's just like a piece of paper. It's very thin. You can write on it, even, as we did earlier, right? And that's perfect to get things started. Put that in there for later. Okay. And so you start with kindling, and I have birch bark on the bottom. And then one of the tricks you can use, if you just want to be a little bit more neat, is you can take kindling over here, just dry sticks, and you can crush them in half, cut them, fold them together, then take a piece of a vine, one of the tools I learned as a kid, and you can wrap it and you just have a bundle, right? And that, rather than this big mess that's inside your fire pit, and this will catch up, and it'll be nice and neat. Doesn't have to be neat, but
because you're going to burn it.
Yeah, but you know, when you pay attention to things go better. Okay. So you start with very thin paper, kindling wood that will catch fire quickly, nice and dry, and then you work your way up in different sizes. We have these staged so that they dry out. Wood was a little bit wet. Eventually you want to build an ash base, red hot ash base in there with a nice fire. Bigger pieces of wood going so that you can cook
Yeah, we got a mini bear.
A little mini bear, right? And you work your way up to bigger pieces, right, along the way. Okay. At some point, You might even want to use a piece this big or not, but in the boundary waters we're supposed to keep the fire lower so that we don't have any risk of
burning down
the forest here. So I'll give you an example of how to baton, and I'll baton this little piece of wood in half. You do want something below so that you keep your knife out of from getting damaged by a rock or dirt. And you want it to be nice and stable. I'll turn this piece over because there's just a little tidbit of wood there, so now that would be nice and stable.
One other tool that you forgot to mention, the gloves that you're wearing.
Okay, yes.
To protect your hands.
Yeah, gloves is the noodles. The knife slips off because you are handling a piece of wood with a knife close by, and if it slipped off, you could cut your hand. So good to use protection there. Okay. When I baton, it's a smaller piece of wood, but if I were to baton a larger piece of wood, like this one, okay, I would usually like to do this because I like to hit it here, and it'll eventually go like that, and then you have a blade out here that you can continue to hit. Okay. We've been saving this one as our bottom puck, so I'll continue using that one. It's a little bit higher, and I'll baton this one later. But let's start with this guy. Here we go. And like I say, I like to start like that, and it usually straightens out, and there you go. And as you might have seen there, when it lets go, all of a sudden the knife will go down, and that's another good reason to have something that's away from your toes. You wouldn't want to do this in bare feet or swimsy moccasins either. So there's that piece of wood there, and that'll be perfect for the fire. To get the fire that we don't have to pay. The thicker the wood, the less attention you have to pay to the fire for a longer amount of time once you get the ash base going. But for these little sticks, to get things going, how would you create those? Is we have our piece of wood, and one thing, I could go right in half like that because I have a big knife, but sometimes you might not have a big knife like this one, and you still want to baton this, and this is a great piece of wood for a campfire. But with a smaller knife, you might want to hack it off in smaller chunks, like this here. All right. And we square it off as such, and a smaller knife could have done that. Usually not using as much force as I'm using right now, because this blade can take it if you had a smaller knife. And you get the point there, and eventually you square it off, and you can get a nice piece like this. And you just keep whittling down to the size that you think is good for you to start a fire, which might be something like this if you had to make your own kindling, right? And then you progressively can get larger pieces once your fire is going, and build up gradually until your fire is roaring. It's a tough process on the knife and on the batoning stick itself. So at some point, your batoning stick becomes part of the nightly fire.
Hand me the knife. Thank you.
Okay.
That's a close-up of the name of the knife.
Thank you. And that is batoning.
That was very informative.
This is Friday night, Thursday night, the night before our extraction, our last fire in the boundary waters for the 2020 trip. We spent we'll be spending 10 days on the water, including tomorrow. And we had a great time. The weather's been beautiful, but cold. But nevertheless, I'd rather be dry and cold than cold and wet. We had one day of a little bit of rain overnight, I think, right?
Yeah.
And that was it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Tonight, this fire, we're gonna cook up 2 corn. You see there in the background, and last night 2 potatoes. We'll heat them up, and we'll probably won't eat all of those, but we'll eat some of it. But nevertheless, the fire is going well, and it's kind of cool out tonight. Nice, crisp and clear. We're bundled up. There's Doug all bundled up that way, and
There's the other Doug.
here's the other Doug all bundled up this way.
We're bundlers.
Bunglers. Fishing bunglers. And the beautiful sunset out over the water, you can see. The sky there's not a cloud in sight. There's a couple clouds. But very out of sight. Look at that birch. I just noticed that birch tree is dead.
I wonder if it's been scalped. How do you know? Oh, you mean this one here?
Yeah.
Yeah. Of course it's been scalped. You can see. That's the one I was talking about earlier. You can see all where the bugs are.